The Ghost Walker by Urban Wendigo. You've probably seen this kid around here before, or at least you've seen him, but never paid any attention to him. I wouldn't blame you if that's the case. Most kids in my neighborhood didn't care about him. If he was hurt on the sidewalk crying, you might have walked right over him. The point is, my neighborhood wasn't very kind to him, and neither was I. That's one of the biggest regrets of my life. His name was Elliot Cutshaw. He was often out at the park, walking his dog. His dog, oh God, how he loved the German Shepherd. He named him Venus, and they were the best of friends. They truly acted like siblings, always side by side, playing in their backyard, going on long walks. They were inseparable. But that's when things changed. What I'm about to tell you is a story I'm not proud of. I've tried to avoid sharing it for so long, but I can't keep it bottled up anymore. Please understand, I was 12 when it happened. Just a dumb, obnoxious kid. I regret everything I did, and I need you to understand that before I start receiving hate emails or handwritten death threats at my door. With that said, this is the story of Elliot Cutshaw. It started around 1996. We had just moved to a house in a suburban area called Ardmore in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The house wasn't great. It was usually freezing cold, and we didn't have heating. My bed was the same one I had had since I was 7, and it was in such a worn-out state that you could see the springs poking out of it. I couldn't even fit in it anymore, so I usually slept on the hardwood floor. Half the outlets were busted, the plumbing was awful. We spent over $16,000 on electricians and plumbers just trying to make the place livable. Eventually, my parents gave up on fixing anything. I was usually ignored. My mom was always busy fixing her nails or trying to mask her age, and my father, well, he showed love with his belt. So I was on my own a lot, and I started looking for friends in the neighborhood. Eventually, I found some. Roger, Valerie, Trevor, and Adam. They were an interesting group, to say the least. Their idea of fun was stealing Trevor's dad's booze and drinking until we saw stars, throwing rocks at stray cats, or even stealing Valerie's mom's BMW. It was awful looking back, but when you're desperate to talk to someone besides the chalk stick drawings you drew on your walls, you'd latch on to anyone. One day we grabbed a bite from a nearby McDonald's and headed to the park to unwind. Valerie was busy drawing shaky tattoos on her shoulder when we suddenly heard barking in the distance. We didn't see much of it until a green tennis ball landed right in front of Valerie, barely missing her head. I turned to see where it came from. Up on the hill, the bark grew louder until a dog appeared sprinting downhill straight towards us. He tackled Valerie to the ground, trying to retrieve his ball. Valerie screamed in disgust. "Get this damn mutt off me!" She shoved the dog away, and a small blonde-haired boy came jogging down the hill, laughing. "Sorry about Venus," he said, reaching for the tennis ball. "When he meets new people, he likes to get right up to them." Suddenly, Adam snatched the ball from the boy and sneered. "You think you could just throw your ball at us, sick your mud on us, and get away with it?" The kid reeled back, clearly overwhelmed. Adam grinned, stretched his arm, and hurled the ball into the woods. The dog whimpered, staring as it fell into the woods. Adam cackled like a jackal, loving the dog's disappointment. "Next time, watch where you throw, you twat," he snapped, shoving the boy to the side before walking with the others. I told him I'd catch up later, then turned back to the kid. He was sitting on the ground, whimpering, while Venus sniffed and nudged him gently. "Hi. Sorry about them. If you want, I could help you look for your ball in the woods," I offered. He smiled faintly and stood. I'd like that. We headed into the trees. While we walked, I got to know him better. His name was Elliot. He recently moved here from Ann Arbor, Michigan. He got Venus to cope with the death of his father, who died on duty as a police officer. They'd been together for about 8 months and did everything side by side. Venus was there for him when he was at his lowest, and Elliot was there for him when he needed company. He told me that the park made him feel at peace, that he felt free to be himself. He told me he felt more spiritual here. Now, spirits, they were something else he said he'd been looking into. The idea of wandering souls stuck in the park, unable to move on, bitter about their unfinished lives. He said that part of him would want to move on after death, but another part would want to stay, to teach the people who hurt him a lesson. One he was too feeble to teach in real life. I told him I felt that way too. I shared a story about how I once told my dad I didn't want to see him again when I turned 18. In response, he sent me to the attic to grab something, then locked the door behind me. The attic was full of wasps and centipedes, both of which terrified me because I was ghastly allergic to them. I spent 2 hours crouched in a dark corner, trying not to move, all the while aggressive buzzing of wasps flying a few feet away from me rang in my ear, and the hundreds of tiny legs from centipedes just crawling on me poked my thigh. My dad later told me it was a necessary rude awakening till life was out him. At the time, I believed it was my fault. Eventually, we found the ball. I handed it to Elliot, but he shook his head. You keep it, he smiled. But it's yours, I said, confused. Why would I deserve it? For actually listening to me. He rustled my messy brown hair, and Venus gave me a big slobber lick on the face. That's when Elliot and I became friends. A few months passed. We spent more and more time together. I'd go on walks with him and Venus. I'd hang out at his house when things got bad at mine. We'd browse the comic book store together. We'd read stuff like Ghostbusters, Batman, or anything supernatural. We sometimes would draw out plans for what our adult lives would look like. Things were good. Until one day, Trevor and the others ambushed Elliot on his way home from school. I can't remember why they started picking on him. Maybe they didn't need a reason. They hit him, tore open his backpack, and scattered his comics and school papers across the sidewalk. I tried to help. I feebly threw a rock to distract him, hoping Elliot could run, but all it did was make Trevor angrier. Then I heard barking. I turned and saw Venus sprinting toward them. He lunged and bit Trevor right on the arm. He screamed in pain as his arm bled from the bite. Trevor then managed to punch Venus in the eye, allowing Trevor to push Venus over. Trevor laughed as the dog raised his paw to his face, whining in pain. It might have gotten worse, but Elliot's mom, who'd been watching from the window, rushed outside and threatened to call the cops. The others ran off, and Elliot's mom scooped him and Venus up and took them inside. I checked on him occasionally throughout the rest of the week. I brought him new comic books that I could find at the store, and I would also buy Venus some new chew toys. Trevor's parents threatened to take Venus away and put him down, but thankfully they decided not to as long as Venus was chained up to his doghouse. Trevor was not happy about it, and one day he decided he was going to sell things with Sis. I was walking through the school hallways one day, and then Trevor stopped me dead in my tracks, and the rest of his group followed. "We need to talk to you, Mikey," he spoke, his voice low and stern as he gave me a stone-cold glare. "What do you want, Trevor?" "That freak you're hanging out with. Whose side are you on?" "What are you talking about?" "That kid and his stupid dog fucked up my arm. I had to step out of the upcoming football game because of that dipshit." "You attacked him, Trevor. What happened was your fault." Trevor laughed at me, nodding to the others as they started to form a wall around me. "You really are a dumbass. Who do you think you are? Are we not your friends? Do we not hang out with you when you were just a nobody in this town?" You seriously gonna betray us like that? He said, his face slowly getting closer to mine before I found myself cornered to the locker. You help me teach him a lesson, or else you aren't welcome to hang out with us, and you'll be our next target, he said through gritted teeth. Sweat trickled down my back as I had my back up against the locker door. I knew that if I tried to tell my parents, they'd not give any care about it and say something like, tough luck, that's your problem, or laugh at me for being intimidated. I closed my eyes as if I didn't want to ever see myself answer. I will help you, on the condition that you don't hurt Elliot or Venus. Roger, who was usually quiet, spoke from the back, his red hoodie almost completely covering his face. We promise. We just planned to scare that mangy mutt. You keep Elliot occupied while we cut off his leash, throw his ball to the back of the house, then I'll pop out and scare him. It'll be the funniest shit ever. I believe them. Something I've come to regret. I thought, sure it's mean, but it'll be relatively harmless. He won't get hurt, right? Next day, I went over to Elliot's house and knocked at the door, while Trevor and his crew snuck around the back. His mom had to work on the weekends, so they could go in without problem. Elliot opened the door and gave me a small smile. Hey, Mike. What brings you over? He asked, the innocence in his eyes sinking under my skin. How I just wanted to scream that this was a setup and to run. But at the time, I thought it was better to have someone be upset with me and stay my friend than lose my friend if I decided to do something worse, and also get beaten weekly if I said no. I made a heavy, inaudible gulp and continued onward. I was wondering if you wanted to walk around the block with me? I asked begrudgingly. Oh, okay. Let me get Venus and we can head out. Actually, I was wondering if you could just go with me, alone. Elliot paused for a moment when I said that, confused as to why I would want to go without Venus, even though we've done almost everything with him. Venus tends to bark a lot, and I have a bad headache right now, so I can't really deal with the barking right now, if that's okay with you, I said quickly, thinking up an excuse. Miraculously, Elliot seemed to be fine with it. He trusted me enough to not do anything without genuine reason. Why did I lie to him? We began walking while Trevor was getting ready for their prank. As we strolled through the neighborhood, Elliot finally spoke. You know, it really means a lot to me that you've been wanting to hang out with me for so long. I used to think that nobody could ever care about me, that I was just doomed to be alone my whole life. People have always looked away when I tried to say hi or ask for help. I felt like it was a mistake, and the earth decided to make everyone ignore its mistake. That day, when I was playing fetch with Venus, I was thinking about ending it. He paused for a moment, his face faltering briefly. The smile on his face turned into a grimace. A small tear dropped from his eye. I felt awful for him. I couldn't imagine if I was in the same shoes as him. That dark pit where you feel like the only thing you have left to do is jump. This made my guilt all the more intense. Why did I keep going? But then, you showed up. You made me feel like it was truly possible for someone to care about me. If nobody came to me that day, if nobody took the time to just ask how it was or just to say hello, I would have been found next morning with a slit across my wrist and a batter on my bed apologizing to my mom for what she would have seen. But I've gotten better. And I have you to thank for that, Mike. It was at this point that I finally stopped walking. I told him the truth. We rushed back to the house. The bullies were halfway through cutting the chain leash with bolt cutters before we got back. Trevor hated me, like I expected, but at least Venus and Elliot were safe. He was upset for a few days, knowing that I was considering helping those jerkwads do some cruel prank on the dog. But he eventually forgave me. Everything was good. At least, that's what I wished happened, looking back. We circled back home. Me and Elliot froze as we heard sounds coming from his backyard. Whining. Pain-fueled whining. What have I done? Why did I trust him? What could they possibly be doing back there? I thought to myself. We rushed to the back. Adam was kicking the poor dog in the side while Trevor cut the leash. Good God, they weren't trying to scare the dog. They were trying to aggravate it to attack. This is all your fault. Your fault. Your fault. Your fault! Elliot turned to me in a brief moment of disbelief. He could tell by the look on my face that I knew what I was doing. There wasn't any feeling of betrayal or rage in his face. Just simple disappointment that he let himself think somebody could be his friend. The bullies finally cut off the leash, and lo and behold, Venus was angry. Venus started chasing Trevor out of the lawn, but that wasn't enough. Venus saw red. Trevor planned this. Elliot started chasing after Venus, crying and panicking, begging Venus to come back. All was drowned out by pure rage in Venus's head. Trevor led the poor dog into the road as he managed to get across. He looked at Elliot and the dog with a cruel, sadistic smile. He had a plan. I saw that look on his face. He had a psychotic and despicable grin that only the devil himself could love. And then I saw the cars cruising through there and realized what he was doing. For fuck's sake, why did I help him? Why did I help him? Elliot rushed into the road, blinded by despair. Venus ran into the road, blinded by hate. It didn't matter why. The point was they were blinded. Too blind to see the delivery truck driving through the road, and then the barking. The calling out for Venus's name. All of that went silent. I can't remember the details of what happened after. It was all too grisly for me to let live in my head. I remember Trevor went to juvenile jail for a few years. Elliot's mom said I didn't know what they were going to do, so it's not entirely my fault. But I think that was her way of convincing herself to not murder me in cold blood. I hate myself to this day for it. Even after everything that happened after this, I avoided eating anything, or by that I mean I refused to eat any of my dad and mom's leftovers from when they stuffed their faces. I didn't go outside much anymore. I didn't even show up to Elliot's funeral. I feel awful about it now, but at the time I thought that I would be the last person he could ever want there. A few weeks passed. I was lying in bed and something peculiar happened. I heard a dog barking from within my closet. It sounded like Venus. I was too afraid to open the door, so I was having some visions in that when I opened the door I would see the mangled corpse of him all covered in skid marks from the truck. However, the more I ignored the sounds, the more agitated they became. Then it turned into growling. I covered myself with my blanket trying to hide from the sounds, determined to believe it was just a dream. Then, there was an imprint on my blanket of a snout slowly emerging towards my face. My skin slowly went pale. I clenched my blanket tighter and I backed up as much as possible the closer the snout got. The growling became much more audible and intense. I've wanted to avoid pulling down my blankets as long as I could, or that once I pull it down, I'm going to have to face Elliot and his dog and be forced to look at what my actions caused. Seeing Elliot's face in several pieces, an eye dangling out of socket, his limbs all Frankenstein together, just barely holding on. But the time I had to avoid looking was limited. The thing had backed me into a wall. I finally had no choice, and I yanked the blanket off myself. Nothing. It was just blackness of the night. I wanted to believe it was just a nightmare, a telltale heart scenario. but I swear to God, I saw what appeared to be paw prints leading back into the closet. I looked around my room, trying to see if anything was out of place to deduce if it was real or not. I looked over at the tennis ball that Elliot left me. I walked over and held it in my hand, remembering what things were like before this all happened. But then I noticed something. It felt wet, slimy. I placed it down and looked at my hand and then at the ball. Dog slobber smeared all around it. A few days passed. I had a knock on the door. It was Adam, Valerie, and Roger all standing at my door, spray paint in their hands. At this point, I just wanted to get whatever they wanted over with, so I sighed. What do you want? We wanted to thank you for your help with teaching that tool a lesson, Adam said with a gleeful smile. However, he may be gone, but we still have a score to settle with him, Valerie added, all the while taking a breath from her vape. That dipshit got Trevor stuck in jail now. We need to make him and that windbag of a mother of a lesson and fucking with our crew, and we want your help, Roger said in a low, serious tone. How could they ask that? I already hated myself for helping them before. Why would they want me to help them now? However, I said yes. I wasn't going to partake in whatever they planned, but I wanted to bring the tennis ball and some flowers to his grave. I wanted to pay my respects, and this would give me the chance to. So we headed over to his burial place. He was buried near the park he once loved going to, where we first met. Where he was contemplating taking his life before meeting the person who would lead him to his death. They planned on vandalizing his grave with the spray paint, and I would keep watch for cops. They were stomping on the newly born grass that was starting to cover up where they buried him, kicking up dirt onto the gravestone. They spray painted the phrase, "Play dead and stay dead," onto Venus's slate. They then went over and sprayed "Good Riddance" onto Elliot's. Then they started kicking and beating the gravestones with their shovels and feet, somehow managing to taint the inscription of Elliot's name on there. Now they were going too far for me to sit idly. Guys, Elliot has already had enough living. Why beat a dead horse, I asked, trying to avoid conflict. Adam turned over to me with a snarl. He was going to stop until his slate was dust. He then went back to stomping. I then decided to take matters into my own hands. I may have failed him in life, but I wasn't going to make him suffer to death. I rushed over and tried tugging Roger's jacket, trying to get them to stop. Enough! This isn't worth it! Let's stop before somebody sees us! Roger just shoved me, and then they stopped. I knew damn well they didn't stop because of me. They felt something. A presence was among them. They could feel the air becoming colder. The wind howling froze stiff. The birds calling from within the woods stopped, as if they were hushing to hide from something. Then, within the corner of my eye, I saw something emerging from the top of the hill. It was blurry to make out at first, but then it became more clear. I could make out a small figure accompanying the taller silhouette. 2 ears pointing up like horns, 2 yellow glowing eyes, and growling. It was a dog, and I recognized the growling. The same growling from my closet. God, it was Venus. Then, the other figure became more clear. It was Elliot. He looked horrible. His upper jaw was missing from when the truck hit him. The right side of his face was torn up and bloody. His legs were crooked and gangly. His eyes glowed yellow now, much like Venus. And just as I imagined before, the skin marks from the accident were still visible on his face. The figure slowly walked down to the hill, walking slowly, as if limping. I slowly started backing away, trying to get an engagement of the others' reactions. They didn't seem shocked or scared, just a sense of paralyzed thought, trying to figure out if what they were looking at was real or fake. I started backing away faster as Elliot lifted his arm, revealing the leash holding Venus back. He
He then let slip out of his hand. At that moment, Venus started charging full speed towards us. I had no time to think, no time to scream. I just scrambled to get away from him. The others slowly got out of their trance and tried running as well. Too little, too late. That hellhound lunged at Roger, sinking his claws into his back. He stumbled down to the ground and turned towards Venus as he pinned him down, putting all of his weight onto Roger's chest. The dog opened its mouth and started revealing its long tongue. It slivered and hissed like a snake as it licked Roger's face. The dog then proceeded to feast upon Roger's face, which motivated me and the others to start running even faster. I turned around to see if Venus was done and about to chase us. He was still busy feasting on Roger's flesh, but I did notice that Ellie was now pursuing us. Valerie kept running, but then tripped over herself while trying to run uphill. Valerie tried to get herself back up, but by the time she did, Elliot was already right behind her. He grabbed her by the throat, lifting her into the air with his arm. Elliot just seemed to glare at her, unable to make any real noise without his upper jaw. Instead, Elliot just made this long, uncomfortable stare into Valerie's eyes. As he did so, I noticed his other hand slowly reaching to her chin. Then, within an instant, he snapped her neck like a twig. Valerie collapsed to the ground, limp. At that moment, Venus had just finished feasting on Roger and locked onto us. It was just me and Adam left. I rushed into the thick woods, trying to keep an eye on the path ahead so I don't get lost, should I have to dart off trail. Adam tried to hide on the ground, burying himself within fallen leaves. Elliot grabbed Venus' leash and had him sniff us down. I tried desperately to shimmy myself up a tree to avoid getting caught. I watched as Venus tracked Adam down into the leaves. The last thing I remember from that moment was Venus pulling Adam out of hiding by the leg and dragging him deep into the woods. Adam's screams fading out the farther away they went from me. I waited a few seconds before slowly trying to lower myself off the tree. However, my foot missed the branch, and when I released the branch I was grappling onto, I fell straight onto the ground with a loud thud. Elliot, who was just about to go back for Venus, turned around to face me and started pursuing me. I tried to run, but I couldn't for long. My leg was twisted from the fall, and my arm was broken from landing right on it. I turned around to face him as I slowly backed away. Venus emerged from the woods, blood and pieces of flesh dripping from his teeth after doing whatever he did to Adam. I lifted my hand helplessly, hoping to somehow appeal to Elliot's nicer side. Elliot, I don't know what to say. I can't imagine how it felt to be betrayed by me. I am sorry. I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm sorry. I made the mistake of trusting them to be my friends, but they weren't my friends. Never were. You were my friend, and I betrayed you, scared what they would do. I'm so sorry, Elliot. I did care about you. I didn't mean for things to go this way. I begged, I cried. I was at the mercy of a wraith who could kill me if he wanted to. I didn't know what it would take for him to let him forgive me. Then I remembered the ball, that tennis ball he gave me. I felt my hand in my pocket and pulled it out, still covered in dog drool from the other night. I lifted it out to him, hoping it would make him remember the better times. Look, for God's sake, look, Elliot. This is how we met, remember? I helped you get back Venus's ball in these same woods, remember that? The snarling from Venus slowed down. He was still glaring, but it wasn't blind by rage anymore. Elliot slowly stopped approaching me. He cocked his head to the other side, looking at the ball skeptically. I felt a small sense of ease linger over me, feeling mild relief that I seemed to calm him. I know I'm the reason this happened to you, and I know you can never forgive me for that. But remember the times we shared too, how you wondered if the world would care if you were gone. I was the only one who talked to you, right? Please remember the good times. I wish I could take back what I did. I wish it was me who hit that truck and not you. But please accept my apology. I'm sorry for everything. I didn't expect him to spare me. I truly didn't. By some miracle, I don't know if giving him the ball showed that I cared, or if I somehow appealed to his real self, or some blessing by God. He decided I had enough. But he ceased. Venus slowly approached me and took the ball out of my hand and placed it in his mouth. Elliot stroked my hair for a moment, feeling a touch of humanity one last time. He took the ball out of Venus's mouth and threw it out into the hills of the park. Venus followed suit. Elliot started limping over towards the fields of the park before looking back at me one last time, and with some form of content in his eyes. He turned back, and as he went towards the hills, he became smaller and smaller and smaller. And just like that, he was gone. I wasn't the same since then. We moved out of Pittsburgh and moved to Scranton. My mom and dad started to separate, and after that, she seemed to become happier as a person. A better person than she was before. Elliot's grave was fixed up, and the hauntings seemed to have stopped. Well, mostly. A few months after the ordeal at the park, Trevor was found dead at the juvenile jail. They found him with his legs bitten into, and something was lodged down his throat, making him suffocate to death. When they did an autopsy report, what they found was a slimy green tennis ball. This is the story of The Ghost Walker by Urban Wendigo.